What's happening, folks? Welcome back to Celtic Fans TV. No game this weekend, obviously, but I finally got the chance to get round to making a video that I've been wanting to make for a while. A few of you guys have been asking for it in the comments as well. If you remember back at the start of the 1920 season, we done a Celtic tier maker video where we went through the whole squad, split them up into the tiers about who we should keep, who was vital, who was important, who was a squad player, who we should punt, who we should sell, and who would leave, all of that sort of stuff. So we're obviously all awaiting the rebuild in the summer. There's a lot of talk about it. We are awaiting the appointment of a director of football and a new manager, but there's so much debate about what members of the squad should stay and who should go, and what the Celtic squad is going to look like next season, because there's no doubt that with so many loan players here, a lot of guys entering the final year of their contracts, and the speculation that surrounded a few of the big players this season, that there's going to be a lot of change. The Celtic squad's going to look very, very different at the start of next season to what it is now. And I want to run through my thoughts on who I think will stay, who's vital, and who should possibly move on as well. No doubt there'll be disagreements. A lot of you guys will disagree. That's what it's all about. It's about opinions. And hopefully we can get some debate. I've seen a lot of people talking about different players on social media and stuff, so it'll be great to get your thoughts as well in the comments once I've ran through the whole squad. So here's how this video is going to work. There's going to be 5 tiers. You can make one of these on your own at tiermaker.com, by the way. The top tier is vital, the second tier is important, the third tier is squad, the fourth tier is loan, who we should loan out, and the final tier is sell or leave. So in part 1 we're going to run through important players, squad players, and players that we should loan out next season. In part 2, we're going to tackle who's vital to the rebuild and who should stay next season, and who should be sold or leave or move on next season as well. Before we get into the important tier, this video is sponsored by the OneFootball app. It's the best football app on the planet. You can get lineup notifications as soon as the teams are announced on match days. You can get all the Celtic related news sent straight to your phone as soon as it breaks. You can get pre-match stats as well. You can keep tabs on league tables. You can get goal alerts from all around the world. You can download the app by clicking the link in the description of this video. It's free wherever you get your apps on your phone, and it's a brilliant way for you to support Celtic Fans TV. So if you watch all the time, you want to do something to help out, clicking the link below to download the OneFootball app is the best way to do that. So get involved, download the app, and let me know what you think. So first up in the important tier is Christopher Jullien. I think Jullien has been a good signing for Celtic. He hasn't been absolutely amazing, but he hasn't been a failure either. We've had some really bad signings, and the recruitment strategy is something that I think is going to change with a new director of football, a new structure, and a new head coach. I think the recruitment has to get much better at the club, and Jullien was obviously a big signing at £7 million, and I think he's been good. He's obviously out injured just now. It's a long-term injury. 9 months he's going to be out. He's maybe been out for 1 or 2 of those months already. So he's not going to be fit for pre-season next season. And that's a huge blow, because the depth at centre-half is just non-existent. And we really need to address that. That's one of the key areas of the team that we need to recruit quickly in the summer at centre-half. But I think Jullien is important. When you think about this season, you could run through the whole squad and you could just about make a case for moving everybody on, because the performances have been so poor and there's been very little standout individuals all season. But we can't judge all of these players in this season, because this has been a really, really bad season. But there's been previous seasons where a lot of these guys have excelled, and hopefully with a new manager and a new tactical system, new setup, and hopefully a new motivation, they can get back to those levels that we've seen before this season. But I don't think there's any doubt that Jullien has to stay. There's not going to be a lot of continuity in defence. Continuity in defence is something we haven't had enough of this season. And I think Jullien is really important, and it's important that we keep him. Next up, it's probably a controversial one. I know a lot of people disagree, but I think Albion Ajeti is important in the Celtic rebuild. I think Ajeti has something to offer. We've obviously got 4 first-team strikers at the club, and Ajeti, Edouard, Griffiths and Klimala. I think you could make a case for all 4 of those guys leaving, but we can't let all of the first-team strikers go and totally rebuild from there. Edouard's contract's running down, and we'll come to him later on. Griffiths has had his fitness issues and really hasn't made a long-term impact in the team for multiple seasons now, and Klimala still looks a little bit rough around the edges and like he's not ready to be a first choice Celtic striker at all. So you could make a case for all of them leaving. Ajeti has struggled to make an impact this season, I accept that. He struggled with his fitness as well. I think the whole squad has struggled with its fitness at times. But I think under a new manager, Ajeti can be an asset for us. I know a lot of people think he looks lazy at times. He seems to be a penalty box striker to me, but we've seen enough this season in glimpses to see that he can finish. And as I say, if Edouard's going to go, there's doubts about Griffiths. There's certainly doubts about Klimala long term. I think Ajeti has to be important in this rebuild because, as I say, we can't just let all the strikers go and start with 0 strikers because that, I know we're talking about a big rebuild here, but we can't strip it back to 0 strikers and build for there. Someone is going to have to, you would think, replace Edouard and try and replace those goals that he's come up with in each of the last 3 or 4 seasons. Edouard is going to leave a big gap in the team if he goes, and we will need to recruit in that area as well. But I think Ajeti can be important in the rebuild, and I hope under a new manager he can find that fitness, because that's obviously massive for him. He's got to find the fitness, he's got to get a run in the team, and then see if he can make it long term number 9 for Celtic. Next up in the important category, if you thought the last one was controversial, then this one is going to be twice as controversial, because next up is Vasilis Barkas. I can already feel everybody shouting and cursing at me for behind the camera, because more than half the fan base has written Barkas off. I know he's barely made a save when he's been in this season, but again, we spent £5 million on him. I think there's probably a good goalkeeper in there somewhere. And what do? Do we cut our losses and sell him again at a loss? Because we're not going to recoup £5 million for him. I don't think we're going to do that. And again, maybe he's just taking time to adjust to living in Scotland. And the goalkeeping situation is one that's been a disaster for us all season. Like I said, in defence, there's not been enough continuity there. I think defence is where you need a regular centre-half pairing, a regular goalkeeper, and even a regular back four, if you can get that. And those guys have got to know each other inside out and really get used to each other. We haven't had that. We went from Barkas to Bain to Hazard, back to Bain, back to Barkas, back to Bain. It's been an absolute nightmare, this chopping and changing of the goalkeepers. But again, with Barkas, I think it can be important in this rebuild, because again, I don't want to write any of the new signings for this season off. I think under a new manager, he could improve. And I think, again, we don't want to strip it back to having 0 goalkeepers. You could make a case that Hazard maybe isn't good enough to be the Celtic number 1. You could certainly make a case that Bain isn't good enough to be the long-term Celtic number 1. And then if you want to say Barkas, I chuck him as well, then we'll end up with 0 goalkeepers. Like I've said, in centre-half and up front, we can't just strip it back and let everybody go, sell everybody, because that would be an absolutely impossible job and it would cost a fortune. So I think Barkas under a new manager. The reason I haven't put him in squad is because he's either going to be important or he's going to get sold. I don't think he's going to be like the second choice goalkeeper over 3 or 4 seasons for Celtic. At £5 million, he's either going to be important and become the number 1 or he's going to be sold. I don't see a situation where he just sits on the bench for 2 or 3 seasons. I really don't see that. So maybe it's because I hope he's going to be important, or maybe it's because I think he can be important, but I've put him in that category. And again, I just hope that he proves people wrong. I hope that next season he can get a run in the team early in those qualifiers, find some confidence, hopefully he's settled into life in Scotland a wee bit more. If the COVID restrictions have lifted and life is a wee bit more like normal, maybe that can happen. But I think he can be important. And as I've said before, with Bain and Hazard, I don't have confidence that any of them can be the long-term Celtic number 1. I'd like to see Barkas over the longer term, and then we can write him off or not. But listen, I know that'll be controversial, and there'll be a lot of people disagreeing with me in the comments. But as I say, that's what it's all about. It's all about opinions. And you can leave your comments below disagreeing with me if you like. That's it for the important tier. There's only 3 players in it. This was difficult, and I think if you go and make your own one, you'll find it difficult as well. I think there is going to be a massive turnover of players this summer, and it's really hard. It's really hard to separate who's important and who is looking like a squad player at the minute. First up in the squad tier it is Myla Sorrow. Now that's harsh. I know a lot of you will think that's harsh. And he did just miss out. I'd considered really putting him in the important category because when he came into the team in December, he was a breath of fresh air. Really dynamic, good pressing intensity. Looks like a really natural number 6. And his passing was good early on in some of those games. But I think his passing ability is just the reason why I haven't put him in important. I think his passing at times in recent games has been really, really inconsistent. And I wouldn't be confident with Sorrow starting 40 or 50 games next season in the 6. I just don't think he's quite there yet. I'm not saying he can't get there. As I say, I nearly put him in the important category, and I think he can be part of this rebuild, and I think he can make an impact, and he's got something to offer in this Celtic squad, there's no doubt about that. But he's just missed out on the important tier. He's in the squad category. He can develop. There's things that he can definitely get better at. He's still relatively young. I think he's 23 is Myla Sorrow. I'm not going to write him off, but I don't think he's quite like a vital, important part and someone we should necessarily build the team around, because he did start really well in December, but I think his performances have tailed off and he's not quite the finished article yet. But again, he can be a part of this squad with a new manager and there's development in him. I think he's definitely worthy of being part of this Celtic squad next season. Next up, it's Lee Griffiths. Again, this might be controversial for some people. I think if you asked 100 Celtic fans about Lee Griffiths, a third would put him in vital and important, a third would put him in the squad, and a third would sell him. That's how divisive he's becoming in these past few seasons. There's been a lot of issues off the field with him and with his fitness. We know that fit and firing Lee Griffiths gets you goals. He guarantees you goals. He's a natural goal scorer. We know that. He scored over 100 goals for Celtic, which puts him in a really unique club, if you like. But the fitness issues are a massive concern. He's made 72 appearances in the last 3 seasons. So he's averaging, 24 games a season. That's not a lot. That is a squad player. That's the sort of return you get from a squad player. As I say, there's no doubt he gets you goals, and he's definitely got something to offer. I think off the bench, even as we've seen at times this season, off the bench, he can be a real asset when we're chasing games, when we need a goal. You know that 9 times out of 10, if a chance falls to Lee Griffiths, he'll put it away. But long term, again, we've got to think long term. Can he sort his fitness issues out? Can he get back to the Lee Griffiths of the 40 goals a season under Ronnie Dyler, which, by the way, is now a long time ago? Some people talk about that all the time. It's now 5 years ago or something. It's not recent. We can't even rely on him to play 40 games a season, let alone score 40 goals, and he's got to sort that out if he's going to have a future at Celtic. As I say, I think a lot of people would put him in important, and they would say, I build a team around about Lee Griffiths. And listen, a lot of people would tell you, just chuck him because he's had his chance. And I can understand both points of view, because as I say, he's a goal getter, but he's let us down. He's let us down a lot, and he's got to sort out those fitness issues. Kind of like Ayeti. Ayeti hasn't been here very long at all, though. Lee Griffiths has. And if you look at his time at Celtic, what we get from him is diminishing. It's diminished almost year on year. And I don't think we can keep giving him unlimited chances. I think coming back out of shape last season was a big mistake for him, and he struggled to get a run in the team this season. And we've seen his partnership with Edouard be really good at times. But as I say, it looks like Edouard's heading for the exit anyway. So Lee Griffiths has got work in his hands if he's going to get a long-term future at Celtic. He's also in the same boat as Edouard, and his contract expires in 2022. So it's a real crossroads for Lee Griffiths in his Celtic career. But I think he can be still part of the squad. I think he's got something to offer. And hey, at 29, 30, if he can sort his fitness out, he's still got a couple of good years left in him. As I say, I know that one will be divisive, but I think Lee Griffiths can be part of the squad and part of the rebuild in some form next season. Next up is Greg Taylor. I'm going to try and fire through these because there is a lot of players in the squad tier. It is Greg Taylor up next. I think Greg Taylor has done okay at times this season. I think he's a steady option, Greg Taylor. He's not the long-term first choice left back. I think left back is another area that we really have to address in the summer. We had to address it last summer. We brought Diego Laxalt in. It hasn't really worked out. And I think Greg Taylor is a good option as a squad player, as a backup left back. He can function in this Celtic team well. Certainly against most of the teams in the league, Greg Taylor has the ability to do a job for Celtic. As I say, I just don't think he's at the level where we can say he's the first choice long-term left-back to get back to challenging in Europe and really play at a high level. I don't think he's quite there, but he's definitely worthy of being part of the squad next season. And again, we find ourselves in that situation where if Laxalt goes back to AC Milan, and you want to say that we should get rid of Greg Taylor, then we've got 0 left-backs. As I say, there's a lot of positions around the pitch where you could say that, but I think Greg Taylor's definitely worthy of being part of the squad next season, and I think he will be. Nir Bitton is up next. Again, I agonised on this one because Nir Bitton has been here for so long. He's let us down at times this season, namely at Ibrox. I think he's far too lax at times. There's plenty of games at centre-half where he can do a job, certainly at home against the lesser teams in the league. He can do a job there, there's no doubt about that. He's been converted to a centre-half now. I couldn't tell you the last time that he played in midfield. He is a bit of a utility man. He stepped in and done a job for us at times, but as I say, he's also let us down at times. The situation at centre-half, as I said, is a huge headache for us. We could be in a situation next season where we start the qualifiers with Stephen Welsh, Nir Bitton, and possibly Jack Hendry if he returns for his loan. So that's why I think we can't get rid of Nir Bitton. His contract does run until 2023. He did sign an extension relatively recently. So I think Nir Bitton is going to be part of the squad next season. Next up in the squad tier, it's Mikey Johnston. Huge problems with injuries recently. That's something that he's got to sort out. I think he's got something to offer. There's a lot of potential in him. I think his dribbling ability is fantastic. I've seen a lot of people write him off, so I know this one might be divisive, but I think it's really unfair to write him off. I think as a young player, we've seen a lot of promise from him. He's obviously struggled with injuries and he's got to sort that out. Listen, I don't know how you sort out the fact that you pick up a lot of injuries. He's got to become more robust in some way because he's never going to make it as a long-term Celtic player if he can't rid himself of these injuries, because he's never going to be able to get a run in the team. The boy's got undoubted ability. I don't think you can argue that. And he's got something that's actually quite rare in the modern game. I think in modern football, a lot of the times, it looks like players have been brought up to just pass sideways, back the way, and individual freedom and real dribbling ability where you can just say to somebody, listen, see when you get in that area, do what you want. Run at defenders, commit defenders, go by them. I think that individual expression is lacking at times a lot, and I think he's got that ability. He's got that dribbling ability. He's got the ability to commit defenders. But as I say, he's just got to sort out the injuries. He's got to sort out his fitness. He's got to become more robust. But I don't think there's any doubt that he's got something to offer to the Celtic squad. Still relatively young. Again, I know that he's not 18, 19. He is in his 20s now, and he's got to start delivering soon. But I think there's a place for him. There's definitely a place for him in this Celtic squad next season under a new manager. But as I say, the big thing for me about Mikey Johnston is he's got to sort out the injuries. Next up is another academy graduate. It's Ewan Henderson, who under Brendan Rodgers was starting games for Celtic and holding his own and looking like he was going to be a really good player. His game time has been massively limited under Neil Lennon. We saw him come in to the Lille game, again playing out of position on the right-hand side of midfield, again holding his own, showing that he's got quality. And again, I think there's a place for him in next season's Celtic squad. I think that Ewan Henderson can be a Celtic player. Again, I've put him in the squad tier because I don't see him by any means being a starting midfielder next season for a big period of games. But he's got something to offer, and I think there's development there. And I think what Celtic haven't done enough of is get these academy graduates into the first team and give them enough minutes. I hope that that's something that's part of the restructure with the new director of football, the new head coach. And I think that Ewan Henderson's got the quality and has got something to offer this Celtic squad next season. Completing this trio of academy graduates is Stephen Welsh, who's started a lot of games for us this season because of the problems we've had at centre-half. I think he's impressed at times. Again, I don't think he's quite at the level where we can say he's got what it takes right now to be a first-choice centre-half long-term. I'm not saying he can't get there, but I'm just saying he's not quite there just now. So I think if we get reinforcements and recruit well at centre-half in the summer, Stephen Welsh can be a good squad player at centre-half. And as I say, there's development in him yet. I think he's impressed at times this season, and I think he's well worthy of a place in the squad next year. Next up, it is Scott Bain, currently the Celtic number one. Again, We've seen a lot for Scott Bain in his time at Celtic. He's actually started quite a lot of games now, to be fair. I don't think he's got what it takes to be the long-term number one at Celtic. I've put him in the squad tier because I think, again, if we sort out the goalkeeping situation next season, if Barkas does become an important player, he does become a number one, he does become a goalkeeper capable of being the Celtic number one over a long term, or we do bring in a new signing, we sign a new goalkeeper, I think Scott Bain can still be the backup. Again, you could possibly make a case that all three goalkeepers maybe aren't at the level it takes to be Celtic's number one, but you can't let them all go. You can't start with zero goalkeepers, just like you can't start with zero strikers, zero left backs, zero centre halves. I think Scott Bain can be the number two or the number three if we bring in another goalkeeper. It maybe wouldn't surprise me if another club in the Scottish Premiership, maybe at a good level, came in with a bid for him if we thought it was a good idea to let him go. But I think he can be the number two, he can be the backup goalkeeper, and I think that's his place in the Celtic squad next season. The final player I've put in the squad tier is Jack Hendry. That's probably a surprise for a lot of people because I know Jack Hendry was massively underwhelming in his time at Celtic. He's gone away to his loan in Belgium. I think he's performed well by all accounts. I've seen a clip from an interview with him recently, and maybe he's going to come back to the team in the summer with a new motivation, with a point to prove. I think the only reason I've really put him in the squad tier is because we need cover at centre half. If Julien's going to be out, Christopher Ajer could potentially leave. We might end up, as I say, in a situation where we've got Welsh, Beaton and Jack Hendry as the centre halves, unless we get someone in the door really, really quickly. So I've put him in there. I've put him in the squad tier because we need cover in that position. I'm not saying that he's going to come back and take the team by storm and be totally revolutionised, totally rejuvenated and look like a different player. Someone who can go on and be a long-term first-choice centre-half at Celtic. But I've put him in the squad tier because we've got such a lack of options at centre-back. That's the only reason that he's there. I'm open to being proved wrong if he does come back and take us by surprise. But I'm just going to put him in the squad tier purely on the basis that we don't have enough centre-halves to go into next season. Finishing off part one, it is the loan tier. There's only 3 players in here. First up, it's Luca Connell. I think we should have loaned Luca Connell out and got him first team football somewhere in Scotland or maybe England if that was the case. This season, at the start of this season, he hasn't played any first team football for Celtic. I know we had that friendly where he looked quite impressive. I think the first team experience would have been good for him to go and get it elsewhere, and then we can maybe get some feedback about how he's performed at first team level week in and week out, and we can judge whether he's going to make it as a Celtic player. I'm not going to say write him off, sell him. I think he's still young enough that if we get him a good loan move, like we've seen with Ryan Christie in the past, and some other players as well, if they can go and get a good loan move at a decent level and get the opportunity to prove that they can play first team football at Scottish Premiership level, they can learn, they can develop, they can get better. As I say, I think we should have done it earlier with Luca Connell, but I'm open to him staying, going out on loan next season and trying to get that experience, and then we can actually judge whether he can be a Celtic player or not. Next up, it's Patrick Klimala. This might be a surprise for some people. I'm sure there's some of you that think we should just sell him or move him on. I think there's definitely some of you, because I read the comments, I read the messages, who think that he's got something to offer and he should definitely at least be part of the squad. I just think, again, he could really benefit from going and playing week in and week out as a first choice striker for someone. It can't be for Celtic because he's not at that level. He's not at that level yet. He might get to that level. I really admire what he's done with his fitness, his physique. He's went away and worked in the gym. He's got bigger. I appreciate that. I think that's really good. I think his work ethic's brilliant. I think he puts a lot of effort in. You could say that those are the bare minimums, but I really am impressed with his work rate and his commitment. He's just got to go and play football. First team football, week in and week out. Be somebody's first choice striker. See if he can bring 10, 15, 20 goals a season for a club, again, maybe in Scotland, maybe in England, maybe in the Championship, wherever it might be, I don't know. But I don't think he can be first choice week in, week out for Celtic. I'm not going to write him off just yet. Maybe, again, if he can get that loan move, get that experience, we can judge his potential better. And the last one up in the loan tier is Connor Hazard. He just signed a new 2-year contract. He obviously got his chance in the first team this season against Lille and against Hearts in the cup final. And if he never plays another game for Celtic, he'll have that moment that he was the goalkeeper that saved 2 penalties in the quadruple treble final. He'll always have that moment to treasure. I think he does look raw. I think he looks really uncertain coming for crosses. We've seen errors from him. I think John Kennedy recently spoke really honestly about where his game is at. I think he's got a lot of development to do. Again, I know he's had loan spells in the past at Partick Thistle and stuff like that. I think he should go out again, maybe at a higher level this time. Again, if he can get a Scottish Premiership team and go and be their first choice goalkeeper, I don't think there's any doubt that Connor Hazard can learn and develop and get better. And then maybe move up the pecking order for Celtic. I don't know how much the new contract is a reward for what he done this season in the cup final, as much as it is that the club really believe he can go on and become the Celtic number one. As I say, he's got to go out and get more first team experience because he's not going to be the first choice number one for Celtic. And if he can go and get loan experience at another club at a decent level, hopefully in the Premiership, then he can develop. It's the same as with all these guys, Connell, Klimala, and I think Hazard. They're not ready to play for Celtic week in and week out. But I'm not going to write them off and say just sell them. Maybe they can develop, and they've got to go and get a loan spell at a good level to prove that. That rounds up part 1 of the Celtic rebuild tier video. As I say, I'm sure there's a lot of that you disagree with. It was really hard for me. I agonised on a lot of it. We've got part 2 coming up with the tiers that you all want to know about. The vital tier, who is absolutely vital to rebuilding this Celtic squad around about, and who should we sell and who's going to leave. Those 2 tiers are coming up in part 2. Leave your comments below with anything that you disagreed with me on. I'm sure there's a lot of it. Like the video. Don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already. Part 2 will be out on Wednesday, so don't miss it.